Brigitte, do you have your presentation up, or should I?
Well, if you could do it, because honestly, I am on my mobile phone.
Okay, good. I will share the presentation, and then you'll just say change.
You're live now.
Are we going to have the slides on or not?
I've got blue one as my backdrop now.
Hi everyone. Welcome to this live session brought to you by Blue One Inc. We gathered here today for the launch of our new book. It's called Design a Business Case. This is a rare book because it talks about the importance of design in business management, in organizations, and a lot more than that. And as promised, this is not just a book launch, it's more than that. So we've also put together a panel discussion for each one of you, and we have an illustrious group of panelists with us today. So without further ado, let me take this moment to welcome each one of them. First up is Brigitte Borja de Mozota. She is the author of the book Design a Business Case. She's also the founder of Designance, and she's a researcher at the Quebec University, Montreal. Welcome, Brigitte. Also joining us is Steinar Valade-Amland. He is the co-author of the book Design a Business Case. He is the head of strategy and business development at Triagonal Information Design. We're so glad to have you, Steinar.
Thank you.
Also joining us on this panel is Mr. Navyut Mohanot. He is the founder and CEO of Kai India and QBlue India. He's also a mentor at NASSCOM Emerge Forum. Welcome, Mr. Mohanot. So glad to have you. Joining us from NID Gandhinagar is Mr. Guru Prasad S. He is the discipline lead, and he also manages the strategic design management at NID Gandhinagar. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Also on the panel, we have with us Professor Subhadeep Roy. He is an associate professor in marketing at IIM Ahmedabad. Welcome, sir. And finally, we have with us Mr. Amit Gulati. He is the vice president of Association of Designers of India, and he's also the co-founder of Incubus Consultants. So we have an illustrious group of panelists, and I'm really looking forward to this conversation because I think it wouldn't have gotten any better than this. So I will now hand over to Brigitte for her keynote address to take this forward. Over to you, Brigitte.
I will share screen.
Okay. Hello, everyone.
Hey. Can you see the screen now?
No, I can't.
The rest of you, can you see the presentation?
I can't.
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Sorry, there we are.
Okay, well, then maybe I should start. I'm very pleased to share this conversation with India, France, and because I would say that all my life has been about conversation between design science and business science. And it all started when I was, 23, 24. Then I had the opportunity to talk with a designer. And she made me understood a little bit what was design. And in a way, all my life has been about having a conversation with designers made me a better manager. Call it design management, call it design leadership, or whatsoever you want to call it, but it's all about conversation between the two science on my side. So we are going to share with you today a conversation between Steinar, who is a consultant, and myself, who is an academic, both, I would say, expert on the field for many, many, many years, and both having a lot of conversation about, the link between design and the business community. And it all started in Slovenia. I hope you see the screen because I'm using my mobile phone and I don't see the screen and the slides. But this conversation started in Slovenia. And we were there. We were having a nice cocktail in the castle. And we walk down the hill. And we share something about, what is going on. Now we have 20, 40 years of experience on this conversation between design science and business science, and it's not yet working. So why is it? And just walking, we said, well, this is it. And in the end, we had a lot of questions and solutions about the why it's not working and how it should work. So this book is really about that. It's about questions, the why. It's also about solution. We have the evidence of design value. There has been now, as I said, 40 years of design management research on that. And I recently published state-of-the-art chronological study on that. And we see the evidence about, the three phases of how design has been integrated in companies. And, and this is now could be visualized by what we call the design ladder model. Started with no design, then design understood as style, then design understood as process, design understood as culture. But this is about actually research, and we have 21 variables that actually explain where is the value of design in the value chain. And we know that Michael Porter value chain, it has been, the subject of my thesis in 1985, making the link between and using the model of Michael Porter, for instance, in order to see the clusters of value in design. So we have the design nonce model, where we see the 4 quadrants of the value of design: value for products, value for process, value for culture, and value for finance. And recently, we have a lot of consultants in strategy or in, the big 4 or something, McKinsey and EY and Deloitte. They all also are looking and launching some study about the value of design and the economic impact of design. So there it is. This is a situation where really the conversation started. We have the evidence. Evidence-based, in a way, is our conversation. So the book is a conversation, but it is evidence-based. So why is it not working? We have 4 theses, 4 assumptions on that, and it starts really with maybe, this word design is not the right word. It's too fuzzy, too many definitions, and really the designers are just too difficult to understand for the business community. And it might be true because, you can see even now that whenever there is a change in the context in society, Then suddenly design school and design community reinvent a new design discipline. We have seen recently with, service design, now it's UX design, experience design, and now data design or whatsoever. So how can somebody outside the design community really understand what is design when it is so fuzzy like that? Another reason that might be explain why it is still not working, why design is not spreading in every single institution and organization in the world. Well, it might be on the design community side that they don't actually know what it is to run a business. What is the performance? What is the excellence in business? And we know that design education is lacking business orientation. We also know that designers, most of them, don't care about business. They care about the other things. And finally, another reason why another assumption why design does not penetrate is the recent trend about design thinking, where we see that people are just, suddenly expert in design thinking with, in a way, not having any design education. And all the buzz that started with design thinking is actually happening outside the design industry. And finally, it might be that design can enter the world of design, of business, because business is about measure. It's about figures. It's about KPI. You need, you very well know that if it can't be measured, it can't be managed. So because people think that you can't measure design value, well, that might be the final assumption of something that is not working. Okay, so the book really is in two parts after that. It's, first let's go with these four assumptions and find a way to explore what should be done in order to understand that, So we made first the challenge of management and see that all the challenges of recently, are all about innovation, human capital. There is a research and survey done by PwC about the importance now for managers about human capital, digital capabilities, a competitive advantage, customer experience, and obviously, of course, strategy and innovation. So it says something about, we have common words there between the two communities. Another thing is, how can we explain design in a simple way for the business community? And you have two axes: the vertical axis of design thinking, design leadership as an inspire, and you have the horizontal axis of design management, which is enabling. And again, what happened is what you link between these two axis of design, these two domain and force of design leadership on one side and design management on the other side, with the theories of business, just like the Blue Ocean, Christensen, disruptive innovation, Chesborough, open innovation, and even also the experience economy. So again, finding ways to talk about design with, theories that are shared mostly by all managers in the world. And, there is something that is actually changing in companies where you have, innovation center. We have, I would say design lab happening sometime in companies. So it's all about, trying to find a new scenario and about storytelling, about, you know, design into the organization, because in a way, the space between the business science and design science is actually there. But maybe there is something about materiality, because there is something about making it tangible so people can understand that. And finally, you know, trying again in this second part of the book to understand the two forces of design thinking and design management. And we might need more about design in business education, and about, you know, really business people actually experiencing design in their education background. But there is also from design another way to see leadership, another way to see the organization. And actually, what is important is that when you think with a design mindset, you actually make you understand that the organization is actually designed, that it is actually tangible. So the last part of this last chapter, this second part, is about, you know, design thinking has no meaning if there is no design management. You need, on one side, visionary leadership. On the other side, you need optimization skills. Now the third part of the book is about what should we do now. You know, it's about the how, and how you can actually use the solution of the models that we have, and we explain on the first introduction part on design excellence, which is, you know, great design plus design management plus design leadership. And there is a lot, you know, about in the design community about that understand that design is a collective activity. And I always think of my life as a loop. You know, for me, it started I was 24, and I was convinced of that, you know. But when we need, from the business side, we need, you know, evidence, which we have now. But there has been something that what we are going to do now, you know. Could we just please have a conversation, you know? Because most of the time, you know, it's still two worlds in, you know, art and design and business on one side. But we have evidence that, and it shows that we have, you know, this competitive advantage and core competency. And I'm going to share something that is brand new with you. So the last part of the book is really making the models, and you have a lot of reference in the book to go through in order to have this evidence about the value of design, that it works. And we have these 21 variables, which actually came from my study, European study in 2002. And I recently made a survey with a colleague in Hong Kong University about these 22 variables. You know, it was kind of funny. We were going to have 2022. I made this European research in 2002. It was 20 years later. Are they still working, these 22 variables? Has been a change or something? And just sharing with you in 22 variables. Well, it's still working. The four more important variables for the design value are just the same. Competitive advantage, better customer experience, design thought as core competency and knowledge, and we add one new variables in 2022, which was is design participating as a support to strategy decision. And this variable is is really in the new research in the four. I think it's the first in a way. And you see that has been a change. It's more now when you look into the classification of the 22 variables, which actually now are 23. The variable that concern design management, the one that are more on the tactical side, the one that are more about, cooperation between marketing and R&D, and the way, design actually accelerate process, are going down in the classification. And the one that are more, on the culture end, about changing the culture on the organization that is more innovative, the way people actually change and get the organization more user-centered and center, and design, for instance, opening a variety of market or creating new markets. And basically all the variables that are more on the strategy side are going up in the classification, and the one that are more in the operational and tactical side are going down. So now, actually, again, as I said, my life has been a loop, and there is a third loop there, which is, it's all about capacity building. Do we actually need design? Well, we need design because there are a few competencies and capabilities that we don't have in the business community. And so it is, if you think that the first loop of my life has been, let's prove that design can bring value. Now, the second loop was about, yes, but can I give evidence that this value can only be brought by designers? And that was, the second loop. And now what we are facing with all the challenges that we have in society right now is that actually we have that. We have the skills of designers. And if you put on one side of your sheet the skills of the designers and the research that has been done on the skills and the 21st century skills, what we need for the future, when it goes very well on top of that, So what we need now are on top the skills that are actually in design education. And this is the conversation. It should be more now about, the domain of design in organization science, from, I would say, transformation path through understanding that it's all a question of skills. It is all a question about how you educate artists and designers is different from the business education. Acknowledge that actually the skills that you have in the schools are actually the skills that are missing in organization to organize their strategy or manage their future. So I'm opening the conversation now with all the panel members and leaving the conversation to Steinar, my co-author. But as I said, could we have, this kind of platform every day now, in a way? Because this is what we need. I really believe that. I've never been to your country. I think this technology is just wonderful. Like we can talk to each other all over. But could we talk, please?
So thank you, Brigitte, for panning out the book and how it came about and what it is that we wanted with writing it together. And as Brigitte said, it's very much a conversation between practice and research. It's very much a conversation between two ways in on the design concept and how you use design. Personally, the reason why I went into this project and why I'm also engaging in the design discussion, there are basically three. First of all, for more than 50 years, organizations, governments across the world, including India, through NID in particular, have invested billions in promoting and supporting design. And still, there is this disconnect between the user communities of design and the communities who create and produce knowledge about design. So we've done something wrong. The other thing is that we can see that KPMG, PA Consulting, PricewaterhouseCoopers, McKinsey, all the big houses, they have adopted design thinking and design knowledge, and they are making that part of their key services. That structured way of working with design has not yet been embedded in the design industry. Is the design industry actually giving away a legacy of knowledge and skills and of methods to the consultancy houses? And the third one is that one of the key sort of concepts in design thinking is breaking down silos. But what we've done in the design community is building silos. So somehow I just felt that there is a disconnect between what we believe in the design community and what the world, how the world sees us. And the book for me is very much an attempt at trying to address some of the barriers and then to try to show a path for how to build bridges between them. And that's also why we chose the approach to take one of the global surveys of what are the worries of CEOs across the world, and they are innovation. How do we create it and how do we manage it? Human capital. How do we build it and how do we make sure that we have what we need? Digital and technological developments. How do we keep up with the innovation? Competitive advantage, of course, and finally, customer experience. And instead of trying to say we have a better proposition for how to do this than what is there already, because there are masses of business thinking, and it's all based on decades of research and of communication with the business sector. Instead of trying to say we have a better proposition, what we've actually done with the book is to say, if we take what is there of knowledge about how to build businesses and then add an understanding of how design thinking and design management can enhance it, what will that bring about? And I think it would be great to hear you, gentlemen, and thank you for spending a morning on this, even though it's a little later in India than here in Europe. We have, I must share with the audience, a short conversation just a couple of days ago about how we would what would we focus on? Because if we just let ourselves go, we could talk for hours. And I felt that there were three sort of angles that we would like to sort of focus on here. One is design in a context of startups. How does that fit in, and how can you benefit from design in a startup context? The other one was design in organization. How do you embed design in complex organizations, and how do you climb the design ladder? I guess some of the audience will know the design ladder, where you go from using design serendipitously to having it as a strategic component of a company. And the third one is how do you build bridges between business culture and design culture? So I would like to open the floor and perhaps start with Navia Monod about the startup angle, which was very interesting that you brought about.
Right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Steinar. So the question that I heard was, how can startups embrace design and gain from it, right? Um, so here's my view, and I feel very strongly and passionately about it. More than anybody, and I'll just argue provocatively that more than anybody, it's startups that could really benefit from embracing design management, and design thinking, as Brigitte talked about. The whole journey of venture development is really a journey of creating something, in this case, not a product or a process or a service, but all of the above, i.e., you're creating a venture, an organization, which is fundamentally from nothing to something, is an act of design, isn't it? So a startup, so that's one. Number two is, what does design thinking enable us to do? And especially, and I'll pivot to design thinking. The essence of design thinking is saying that, with all humility, saying that I do not know. I will look around, reflect, observe. I will study stakeholders and observe them, and then I will do some experiments with them. And in so doing, I will learn something. And the whole journey of startup development is really a journey of, what does the customer want? Founders, and we've seen founders which have the humility to say that, we have an idea, but we're not sure, and we are happy to go out and experiment and fail and learn and reflect. They're the founders which I think have a higher probability of success, because they are acknowledging that, that they need to serve the customers and reflect with empathy on their stakeholders. B, that they don't know enough. C, that they need to do experiments. And D, the real progress for a startup is not just the number of downloads, but really the unit of progress is learning. And so for startups, and that's what really design. So the act of building a venture is really an act of design, and I think no one is better served than startups. So these are just preliminary comments. I'll pause at that and let some reactions come in.
I would very much like to have the short comments from the three others of you, but just one thing that I thought of when you said that it's very much about looking around, observing, and learning. I think one of the wonders of startups is that very often those are young people, and there is not such an amount of unlearning to be done before you can take on new knowledge. Because that might be one of the challenges of larger organizations and older and established organizations, that you have a legacy of knowledge that you really have to dismantle and challenge before you can take on design thinking, design management, design in a meaningful way. So I think that could also be key, and actually say that startups have an advantage to all the more established companies in terms of taking on design.
Steinar, I just quickly do a follow-up comment in there. It's, to me, in my experience in working with startups, it's a two-edged sword. On the one hand, just like you said, there isn't much unlearning to do. On the other hand, often, they're technical people. There's the audacity of youth, and this audacity of youth basically is a kind of a confidence that they know it, and they're so focused on the technology, and they're so actually sure that they know it. So in a way, it cuts both ways. It cuts both ways.
I think that's true. Gentlemen, Professor Roy, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I would definitely react to that, and that's actually, am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah, so, and that's also reacting to one of the questions raised, that does the same challenge prevail internationally as well? So if we look into Indian companies, one of the major things, and this was actually told by Michael Porter long back, that we are very rigid to change. That actually magnifies the role of design in Indian companies. And if you ask me, I mean, rather than a PowerPoint, I thought this would be a better thing. I'm showing a graph which puts the organization on one vertex of a triangle, technology and customer experience. And now the question is that both technology and experience are going to define the way the organizations are going to perform in the next 15-20 years, because these two things are going to stay. You really need a solid experience, with both not only for the customer but also for the other stakeholders in the entire value chain. And you need the application of technology. I mean, no company can say that we would not embrace technology and go ahead. Now, where does the role of design come? Well, if you look into companies like Dyson, they have done wonders with technology and customer experience and redefined that. But if we want to think at a higher level, when we are saying that, well, can we bridge the gap? Can we really let the organization embrace design? And in the presence of technology and experience, then this is where design comes in.
Yeah, exactly.
It is nothing but the centroid of the triangle. And that is where, if the organizations can look into that, how does design contribute to the organization in terms of the structure, in terms of the operations? How does it really link technology and experience and finally deliver what it is supposed to deliver at a much superior level? Now, why this is much easier for startups to do? Because they are smaller. They are more open to learn. They are more open to change. So I would stop here and then again, maybe chip in later on.
I think that's a very good point, that unless you bring it in as a catalyst of building bridges between the three others, you are not really exploiting its potential. And that is easier in small organizations than in large organizations. And that somehow brings us onto the next sort of large topic of how do you actually embed design thinking in organizations. What does it take for an organization, the management of an organization, to say, okay, that's how we'll do it? How do we create that understanding on a C-level of organizations, so that there is a mandate for the organization to actually do what you just described? Does anyone have any takes on how you actually insert that mindset into design, into organizational sort of structures, and especially into the top management of organizations? I mean, Valade, what would your take be on that?
Thanks. I think, firstly, thanks, Brigitte, for introducing the book. I think it's a very important step forward in creating a common language for designers and businesses to engage. And I think, in a way, the whole field of design thinking has aimed to sort of function as a kind of interpreter of sorts. And I think this book's gonna obviously empower people who are going to get into that role. To take your question forward, you're absolutely right that it's an uphill battle sometimes for small design firms or designers within large companies to communicate their true worth, their value, and find that intersection between the overall strategy of the company and what they can offer. And of course, it is published resources like yours that create a foundation to prove that yes, it's possible. And I think the startup world has done that very effectively, because there is a statistic that almost 3/4 of unicorns have some kind of design involvement in the startup process, and typically one of the founders may also have a better understanding of design, or maybe a designer themselves. So I think the immense value that has been created so rapidly by startups across the world has probably given a lot of weight to the thesis that design can indeed create value. All the work that folks like you have done over the years, trying to show what IBM has done, all those things. I think that thesis has got very, very highly reinforced by what startups have achieved so quickly. And I think those examples are, of course, possible. But a lot of companies often say that, how is it relevant to us? We are making appliances, or we are doing something, which is more legacy. How does it help us? And I think they're trying to prove things in a step-by-step manner, taking small challenges and then, expanding the conversation from artifacts to experiences to strategies. I think laddering up in that way over time is what works best in traditional organizations, and one has to be, of course, a little bit patient yet persistent. And I love that chart. I think it came in from the Danish Design Council. It was in your book, I think. On the laddering of design, I think it's in the beginning of the book, and that was quite a nice illustration of how it's a bit of the camel in the tent. You get in slowly and expand the territory which you can influence over time.
And I think you're very right. And when we look at figures, a number of organizations, they find it fascinating to move from the first to the second level of that design ladder. And some are also sort of mature enough and courageous enough to move to level 3. The challenge is, as I see it, that if you really want to benefit from design, you need to move to the step number 4. And that distance from 3 to 4 seems to be a great barrier for a lot of organizations, because it requires a commitment from the top management of the organization. And that commitment is perceived as being very risky, as opposed to committing to a lean process or any other kind of development process. So I think it's very much about creating comfort and ease around and taking away the risk of using design strategically. And I'm just thinking, Guraprasad, how can we talk about design in a way that makes it less dangerous?
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. And first of all, design thinking, design management is a evolving, complex field, and we would definitely acknowledge, congratulate both of you to bring this book covering the diverse topics. Having said this, very interesting diverse topics are there, and each and every topic is itself a version by itself. A lot of interesting nuances are there in each and every field. I just want to couple of points, and then I'll come back on these aspects. With respect to what Navyuk mentioned on design playing a role for startup, and I completely agree with Navyuk and Amit. In the last decade, India has seen a tremendous possibilities where design contribution and enabled startups. Most of the innovators who otherwise were just having an idea, they were able to actually transform to a complete full-fledged entrepreneurs by the potential of design, where they were able to segment the market, understand the people, user insights, and of course aesthetics and functions. Adding to that, even MSMEs and startups, if you say in the context of India, design played a phenomenal role in transforming, in enabling them from mere component manufacturers to product suppliers. It played a huge role. And third, I'm coming to the why, even for corporates. In fact, in the Indian model, if you see, and since Amit is also vice president of the Indian design firms, India has a very unique model. Most of the corporates, even though they have their in-house design team, they still engage with outside design firms. It's a very fluidic model, because the moment you go big, a lot of stagnancy and inertia creeps in automatically. One should, of course, there is a possibility of making it agile, but one way of even government, private, and government companies look for and take the support of design firms, so that things happens at a much faster pace. They are able to prototype, they are able to validate. The failure rate is much minimized. I think these are the scope where design can possibly get into higher goals. In fact, I would once again emphasis of Professor Ranjan, who talked about the proposal of higher orders of design. Design, if order 1, order 2 focuses on products, artifacts, communication, science, design thinking, design management actually focuses, the realm of design thinking and design management lies on higher orders of design, which is service, sustainability, systems, ecology, people, and ethics. And what one aspect you mentioned about McKinsey and BC, and other management consultancy, I think it's only a matter of time. Designers are already entering these spheres. It's a very combination of right brain, left brain, right brain combination. That's already happening. But yes, it's going to take time. Even though there is a huge potential of design in terms of boardroom decisions where people are able to take informed decisions, but still there are certain barriers. I think it's only a matter of time where things are opening up. And one aspect of how the potential of design which you mentioned can be reaped at the higher levels, I think that one can definitely look into a different organizational structure which could be more fluidic, and one can and it's like, I would take another metaphor. It's like take an electron to a higher orbit. You need constant energy and persistence and dedication. I think by putting the energy, constant energy, I think the design can definitely take higher roles. And still in India and even across the globe, design is still not seen as an investment. Design is not seen like a long-term approach. People want to see quick results. Maybe if I think over in years to come, I think the potential of design will be realized by across all sectors of organizations.
Very good. Amit, you seem to want to say something.
Yeah, I think just one thought came to my mind that even as designers, it's very important to decide early on what kind of designer you want to be. Not every designer needs to be a strategic designer. Not every designer needs to get into a higher order. It's important to know what is your own comfort zone. And I think that honesty and transparency of purpose is also something that gives immense confidence to companies, because they often seek somebody who's going to help them do a job and accomplish a task, and not somebody who's going to constantly be pushing to redefine their own role. So it's a part of that slow moving process where you have to execute what you're trained to do and then move into the higher orders, and not the other way around. I think that's very important to recognize. Despite all the buzz around strategic design, it's very important to accomplish tactics and small but important execution oriented goals first before trying to open the canvas to a higher order conversation. I think that's very important to understand.
Yeah,
and I think that is clearly also key to the message of the book, that if you are not aware of the different roles, but also the different context that design fit in. And if you just mix it up and think that design is design, then it will not be an effective tool for an organization. And there was just a question in the panel, about to educate people in design as a core discipline. If you want, as I understood the question, if you should go horizontally or vertically in terms of building that competence. And I think, first of all, we need to sort out that design has a history in craft, in making, and in the matter, and that discipline can be transferred to non-material, to organizational questions, and so on. But it also needs to be managed, and to manage these processes, it's a different kinds of skills you need. And then design thinking is the third thing. It is to create that organizational framework and that mandate to actually work with two others. Navia, you made a sign to say something.
Just two reactions very quickly. So to Amit's point, yes, I agree. We got to get the craft and the tactics right, and then move up. At the same time, I'd say that why not do both? So senior management have to use design and understand it in a different context and way, and the people starting with the craft will learn it and grow into those roles, and people in between. And so so my thesis here is that it must pervade all the layers, and different people will use it in a different way, and need to see it in a different way, which also brings us to your original question, Steinar, about what are organizations doing at the C level, and how are they getting design embedded or percolated in the organization. In India, at least, in our experience, and it's a generalization. So I know a generalization is a generalization. A lot of the design community does not, looks, suspiciously at design thinking. And a lot of the business and management layers think design is only design thinking. And you have, Vishal Sikka, who comes in from SAP, joins Infosys, and has 100,000 plus people physically trained on design thinking. That's more than 100,000 people. So management right now, and we get a lot of this conversation and inquiries, they all want to do design thinking, and the design folks and the designers in the traditional sense, like Natasha Jen's famous, very controversial video. Remember, she in the Indaba conference said design thinking is bullshit, and there was a lot of controversy. And so I think there's a dichotomy there. To me, the answer really is that, organizations in the C-suite have to look beyond design thinking into design management, as Brigitte said, and have that bridge. But I would just extend it further to a design management system. And that's our learning from, let's say, another intellectual process, which is around quality. And over the 25 years, it were quality management systems. So why don't we have a design management system? Because that's what's needed to go from accidental design to institutionalizing design.
Yes. But that is something that needs an alliance between the design community, as you say, who are almost notoriously a little skeptical towards making it too much of a sort of a theoretical arena, and business, who needs to embrace some for them often a little unusual ways and approaches. But I'm just thinking, who would be the right carriers or sort of creators of this? Because what I'm thinking is that you need a context where everyone can see that this will benefit. And I'm thinking that perhaps that context is not necessarily a company with its strategies and its KPIs. It could also be more of an experimental scene. It could also be in the public sector. I'm thinking that in India there's these 100 smart cities. Could a smart city be a scene where you could really explore the potential of using design in all these different ways and on all these different levels? Yes, Roy?
So I think the point where we should look into is, rather than thinking of design thinking or design management, we should also start looking into design at macro level and design at micro level. So the point which you raised, so let us assume that the government has an agenda to encourage people for fitness. And one of the very good ways in which the present government has tried to do it is to open gymnasiums which are free and which are in public parks. Now, what you are doing, you are using the basic principles of design thinking. You are empathizing with the people, you are empathizing with the need to exercise, you are iterating what are the possibilities which I can explore, you are using the principles and coming up with a solution. Now, if I compare that with a micro level, a company is selling adult products in India. And obviously, these products will not be sold through retail because there's a lot of shame associated with buying this product. But there's a demand. Now, this company says, okay, I will allow you an e-commerce platform to buy. And I'm saying that, no, I don't want even to receive it at my home because I stay in a joint family. And I'm telling you, okay, I give you a pickup point and you get a QR code in your phone. Once you get the product is delivered, you come there, physically give the QR code and pick it up. So this is where I'm using design principles at the micro level. So whether it is thinking or whether it's management, if we actually know the level at which we are applying the principles of design, the overall objectives of design, I think it is irrespective of whether we are talking about government or at an organizational top strategy level, or maybe at a very micro product or distribution level, we can still apply and get the results which we want, irrespective of the level at which we are doing it.
Yeah.
And it brings us into a discussion which we've had at least in the European Union for at least 30 years now, and that is why, as I started out with, why the investments in projects, in support programs, in experimental programs, in research programs, why all this, which in other sectors would have been more than enough to convince of design's sort of usability. Why is it that when it comes to design, there seems to be this glass ceiling of where design can actually? What is it about design that is so special? What is it that makes it so different from lean, from many of the other things, from quality management? What is it with design that makes it so dangerous?
Can I just a provocation here, Steinar? It's like saying that, before there was business management, there was no business. Of course, there was business for centuries, and of course, they were managing business, and of course, there was trade and commerce. And the MBA didn't come along and invent business. They just codified knowledge, and I would argue that there's nothing dangerous about design. We've been doing design for years, centuries, decades. Let's look back to how many ever years back. People are doing design, have been doing design, have been using these principles. It's just that now, as we start to codify the experiences, best practices, and create, organizational systems, that we will accelerate this. But we've been doing this all along, and so design, it's like same thing. We were using statistics in manufacturing long before Six Sigma came along. Of course, we were using statistics in manufacturing. So I think really it's not dangerous according to me, and I think we've been doing it, and I think the CEOs get it, and I think senior management have always understood the value of design. It's just the vocabulary needs to get consistent, and knowledge is getting codified, and we should make more attempts to measure it. It's just a provocation for the panel.
No, I think you're very spot on. That we have created a minefield of different concepts and ways of talking about design, which makes it overly complicated. While at the core of it, it's very simple. It's about actually asking the right questions, trying to find out, as you said earlier, to look around and observe and to learn, and then to apply that through prototyping and all these things. That's it. It's not much more complicated than that. Amit, you had a comment.
Yeah, just sort of extension to that point that, over the last maybe 15, 20 years, we've been seeing, this urge to kind of create a vocabulary of design for management to understand. And probably in the process, we've overtly systematized it and taken out a little bit of the intuitive aspect, which is inherent in design. So, as the design thinkers start doing their bit for design without actual designers in the picture, what happens is that design thinking starts looking more and more like management, and the distinction kind of erodes. And, you take a very precious thing and you try and change it just so that others can understand it, you will lose something. So it's also important for designers to hold their ground and say that not all of design can be systematized in the manner that a statistician or an economist or an engineer or a management guy would understand, because design, unlike all these other fields, has a very nuanced ambiguity embedded in the concept, and it is not possible to decode it so completely And if you try and do that, it will become something else. It's a bit like the uncertainty principle. When you try and put your finger on it too deep, you will change it and it will become useless, or it will become less effective. So it's very important for management thinkers and those who tinker with this whole thing of design thinking to be careful that they don't make it like management in its own reflection, and in the process lose what designers can offer. So they must understand that there is a creative and non-technical aspect to design. There is a randomness and fuzziness to design, which you need to preserve to really get the maximum output from that. I'm not saying it has to be so vague that nobody gets it, but you can't go the other extreme as well. And I see some of that happening. So, it's sometimes important to be cautious about that.
I totally agree. And that is why we talk about matter. Yes, Guru Prasad.
Yeah, to add on to that, design is dangerous, or I would say design inspires. In the context of today's situation where it's extremely volatile, uncertain, complex, companies need to continuously redefine their practices. And I think design's one core strength of contextual inquiry and understanding the ground reality, which definitely enables organization to take powerful decisions. I think that's where, when you not fear design, probably the time to embrace and get inspired through design.
Gentlemen, we have some questions from the viewers, and I think we should allow a few of those to be sort of discussed. And there is this sort of fundamental sort of discussion of what is design thinking, because design thinking as a term is interpreted in thousands of different ways, and it means anything from post-its on a wall to overriding strategies for entire organizations. So Anuba Kakru says I'd still like to ask the panel and the authors about what the role of design thinking actually is. Can that be captured, or is that still something that we need to explore?
I can take it. So, okay, I'll take it. I'll take that question, and answering this and also taking Amit's point. To me, design thinking, and as the management is starting to embrace it, is actually a great tribute to designers, because what design thinking is saying in a management context is, can't we learn from the way designers think and build stuff, and adapt that and use that in a business context. So to me, there is really, it's a tribute to the way designers think and build. And the role of design thinking, therefore, is, can we understand the mental processes of a designer and use that to build and achieve business objectives. So that's the role of design thinking. And no fight, it's a tribute to the designers.
I would just add to that. I mean, in a sense, that what is the basic difference between design as an activity versus design as a philosophy in the context of business? Because the point is that I can always create Mona Lisa, and I'm a great designer. I have done that. But then, of who is it value of? And compared to that, let us talk about a company which says that, well, I am going to revolutionize the way movies are distributed. Thereby, what I'll do, I'll save the cost of printing those reels that are carcinogenic, and they actually are burned, and that create fumes to the environment. So I will create a digital distribution system. I have helped the environment. I have created a distribution system so that I can go from 30 theater releases in a day to 3,000 releases in a day. So I have helped the business. I have helped the people because the customers are getting a much better viewing experience. What have I done now? I have actually created value at each point of the supply chain through design. Now, when I'm talking about design and integration, and some of the questions actually are related to that, I think that is where we should aim at. And yes, definitely to do that, we would need the designers, because we cannot go beyond that. But then we are doing design with an objective, not just the objective of creation, but the objective of value creation. Value from everybody in the supply chain, or at least for majority of the supply chain.
I think that's a wonderful clarification. There's a lot of interesting questions here. I think we have time for only one more, and I think that's also a very good way of rounding this off before we take a very, very short round of comments for everyone. And that is, especially to Guru Prasad and Professor Roy, how aligned do you believe that academia and design students are with the discussion that we have today? How much does this resonate in the actual design community and design research community?
Yeah, it's a very relevant question. Interestingly, under the NID's pedagogy, most of the projects are real time. They work hand in hand with the craft sectors, hand in hand with the organizations, small scale industries, hand in hand with the industries. So each and every projects, what they undertake is a real time projects, and they work both within the academia, even in their graduation projects. In that way, they are not quite far away. In fact, it's highly integrated, and that's the uniqueness about the design, where it constantly upgrades. What Brigitte also mentioned about why design schools are constantly coming with new disciplines. This is because they are constantly in touch with the outside reality, and they are able to reinvent the process and update their content in the journey. I think it's not quite far away. It's quite highly integrated with. Plus, design schools, not only in Europe, even in India, it has started to work closely with the government sectors. So academia is not quite far away. It's not in isolation. It is integrated with almost all the systems. So in that way, students are definitely benefited, and they are quietly aware of what's happening in the outside world. In fact, after the academia, they are able to directly enter into a professional world without any hindrances. That itself is an achievement. Yeah.
So I'll just add to that. Yeah, I'll just add to that. I would. The only challenge which I think is there in the world right now, at least in these parts, we need more focus on design related text, and that is actually where the relevance of the book which you are writing comes in, because there is a lot of articles and text study material which are available, but we need at the academia side, we need text which can actually take students to the steps, either discipline wise or organization wise, and they actually can talk about how design principles can be applied in macro as well as micro level. The reason is because, well, I can practice, but if I do not really know the steps, I may actually lose sheen after some point of time. So I would rather teach you how to create the sculpture, rather than at the same time I can always show you sculptures. If I teach you, I can actually allow you to do it at your own level, at your own context, at your own organization. So that is something which I think which we should build, because if I look into a discipline like TQM and you type in Google, you will actually have more than 1,000 books. But if you want to have a design textbook, you may really find a handful. That is something which I think from the academic side we need.
Yeah. In fact, in design school academia, it is more like learning by doing. And I think one aspect which maybe can be put across is, in Europe, I would say there is a quite good integration between D schools, B schools, and possibly other schools. Whereas here we still work possibly in isolation. Maybe that can possibly enhance our we have to see more of IIMs, IITs, NIDs, and other.
True.
I think that is still very
true. Yeah.
Thank you so much. We have exactly 5 minutes left before we have to close. So I was just thinking a very, very short comment from each one of you on how do you see this concept of design thinking and design management. How do you see that in an Indian context in the next couple of years? Will it remain the same? Will it develop? Will it catch on? How do you see it?
Okay, so if you ask me, I think it is going to really grow in India, because if we look into the nature of the country and nature of the market, if you look into government, if you look into corporates, as well as if you look into ancillaries, everywhere I think the role of design would increase. If you look into some of the startups which have used the design principles, they have really done wonders. So I think in the next 10 years, we are going to see a lot of companies which are design centric going to survive and grow.
That sounds wonderful.
Yeah.
Navya?
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, take any metric, a number of design schools getting set up, the amount of consulting, the training, the partnership. I mean, you look at it. So the short answer is in India, it doesn't happen. And when it starts to happen, it just goes boom. And I think we're at that cusp in India. And over the next 5 years, 10 years, you will see this hugely adopt. I mean, I would underscore hugely in place.
That sounds fantastic.
That's why I mentioned it's just a matter of time. It is already in the tipping point.
In that tipping point, yeah.
It's a matter of time. Yeah.
Very good. And finally, Amit.
Yeah, so thanks. I think I have two perspectives here. One is that design management for designers is also equally important, because I see design itself as a very entrepreneurial field, and a lot of young designers who are graduating now, especially in India, are seeing entrepreneurship as a way to, creative entrepreneurship, doing their own manufacturing or doing consulting work, which is essentially like a business itself, as a career option, which was not the case many years back. So rather than employeeship, they are choosing entrepreneurship. So you need a practice of design management to get designers to run their own operations, to manage their own businesses, because that's a huge gap in design education. And that is also where the connection between academia and design practitioners is very important, so that they can inspire, teach, and guide budding designers, design students, on how to set up their own practices, make it sustainable, make it effective, and learn the business side of design on a day-to-day basis. I think there's a huge gap in terms of the literature on that. How do design companies need to be run? They're different from other kinds of companies, of course. And I think that is already happening. I see also a challenge that there's a huge shortage of design teachers right now, and more professional practitioners of design need to get into academics and create that bridge between industry, professional practice, and education. I think that's something that design management needs to address. Thank you.
Super. Brigitte will have the last word, so I'll just say this has been extremely inspiring for me, and I hope that the Blue One Inc. will collect all the questions, send them to us, so that if we have something on our mind, we can respond and we can continue the conversation. So I'm just saying thank you so much, and for also being on the same page as us. Brigitte, final word.
Well, that was lovely, really, sharing with you all. I think the conversation was very diverse, but it really, brought up all the questions. One thing that is not happening in the business community is also this link between practice and theory. I mean, it's not only in the design field that it is difficult to have that. We are still trying to have conversation between researchers in business and practitioners in management. So that is not specific, but I still believe that for the help of design coming from between a niche market to a mainstream market, models are important and theory matters. It is simplifying, but it is not an obstacle to creativity or critical thinking or whatsoever visionary view of design. So I would, my final word would be, it is true that when you are good at design, you change the organization. I mean, you change the theory of business. And we should say so. We have based business on a tailor. You have a problem, you make it simple, and that's the way. Okay? Now we need creativity and more critical thinking about this model. And what it is that the design skills are useful for that, for building a new model, for management.
That is the last thing you're allowed to say, Brigitte. Thank you
Okay.
thank you so much, gentlemen, and thank you so much, Blue One Inc.
Thank you,
Thank you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you
you.
all. Thank you. It was wonderful. Thank you to all the panelists.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And thank you for the book, Brigitte and Steinar. We have a
Thank you.
copy
Thank you.
to all of
Yeah.
us. Thank you.
Definitely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. I received my book. Thank you.
Bye.